Hello, I am addicted to filming these videos. Otherwise, I would never film them in the infamous green room or with my hair looking as sane as it does. But it's okay, it's all good. I'm doing part 9 of the What the Hell is Flicker Street? I'm chilling here, watching The Wages of Fear on television. I think I'm going to turn it down a wee bit in case we get to a part where someone blows up. Oops, spoiler. So, anyway, yeah, I'm just kind of relaxed here, so I'm like, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit more about my story. Um, I enacted my weekly ritual today, mailed items out, and had some Subway, but unfortunately, I only worked on my eBay. I did not do any writing in my notebooks about Flicker Street, though I did have a lot of new ideas, and actually last night I wrote an entire thing in a document about a newer character I created. Basically, just his whole origin and everything just kind of fell into place as I kept writing. So I like it when that happens. I like being able to just kind of follow the story and, like I've said a million times, watch, allow the characters to reveal themselves to me and the events to, you know, um, transpire as they're going to transpire. Um, I also figured out some other ways to use this camera today to record some dialogue and some things. Um, Not things that I'll be posting on this channel. That would be way too embarrassing. But this is one thing that Thomas Davis taught me. Mr. Thomas Shackelford Davis, rest in peace, taught me when I was a kid, when he started doing these Dynamite comics that eventually evolved more or less into Flicker Street. Um, is he would act them out, just like kids would do, you know, when you're only children, like he and I were, we would do it in our bedroom. But if it got too loud, we'd do it outside, of course, oblivious to the neighbors hearing us talking to ourselves constantly. Um, but anyway, he suggested I do that. I was already kind of doing things like that anyway when we met. But I mean, we were like, in third grade, I think. But um, the thing is, at one point he wrote me a letter. I think it was 1979. It was about a year after he moved away. And he said to me, "Okay, little buddy," he would call me that sometimes. I guess he thought he was the skipper and I was Gilligan. I'm not clear on that, but I think that was kind of what it was going in through his young mind then. Um, I have another amusing story about that to tell. But anyway, and he said, "Remember, to do this effectively, you have to act these things out. You have to be all the characters." So I was like thinking, well, I already do that, but okay. If the boss says so, the boss says so. As far as I was concerned, he was the boss of Dynamite Comics. Um, so the silly story is brief. My mother got a job as a dental assistant. She rarely worked. She was mainly a full-time stay-at-home mommy and for me. And she got a brief job as a dental assistant, and I had to go to this thing called after school called Mary's Moppets or something like that. The Mary Moppets. This existed, and this was here in Charlotte, and most of the children there were younger than me. I mean, I was probably 9, perhaps 10, 9, 10. I think 10. And most of the children there were between 4 and 9. Um, so to give you an indication, I remember we all weighed ourselves one day, and I weighed like 50 pounds. I was scrawny back then, but I weighed more than any of the other kids. So anyway, I don't think there's anyone my age or older there. There might have been one. I don't know. It's been a long time. Well, not that long, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so they picked me up one day, and I had told Thomas I wasn't happy with the arrangement. I didn't like being there until my dad got off work to pick me up, and he yelled at the people in the in the van, "You better take care of my little buddy, or I'm gonna sue you." And, you know, he was always threatening to sue people or write his congressman. Um, you know, and the guy he was in elementary school. But is there anyone this guy was my hero? So anyway, I was wandering around the house today doing a little cleaning up and having lunch, and uh, I had lunch at Subway, so I guess I was just snacking and just kind of messing around and working on my eBay a little bit. And I started, you know, thinking of some dialogue between some characters. And so immediately, like, I went into these two characters, the mode of these two characters, and began, yeah, acting them out. I'd go back and forth out loud. So I thought, what I should do if I want to capture some really good impromptu dialogue like that in the future is, you know, I've always wanted to. I used to record it years ago, but I never was happy with how it came out. But I'm a lot happier with my writing and my ability to improvise now than I used to be. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing these videos at all. Um, I wouldn't even show my face like this, you know. But basically, I um, did the two characters. I was happy with how it came out. Of course, I didn't record anything. I jotted a couple things down, but it's in my head, so you know I don't know how long it'll stay there. But it's just a starting point. So I'm going to try to turn on the camera like I do for these and kind of, I guess, wander around in front of it, or maybe even out of shot. Who knows? In my living room, I have a nice little spot now that I now call the den, which is where a small area where I have my Blu-ray library and my book library. And basically, it's like adjacent to the Flickr Street studio area. So I would record that, and then I could play back all the dialogue that worked, you know, that clicked and edited accordingly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in a way, I'd be going back to the old, the old Dynamite Comics methodology. So you know, we all come full circle, I suppose. Today, I just want to show you a few of more of my characters, the art, and talk a little bit about each character, just to kind of give you an idea of where my mind goes with these things. I did it with like 4 or 5 the other day, or you know, a few days ago in one of these installments before I became locked into the 13 Days of Halloween deal. I actually like the lighting tonight on this. I don't know how it will look when I watch it, but um, my hair isn't too bad. You know, a kid at work told me that I looked like a mad scientist rock star, so I have adopted that as a permanent description of my look. You know. So anyway, both of them are pretty apt. So you look at like the Wolverine thing going on over here. Um, all right, so I'll just start in with, yeah, we'll go in a certain order here. Okay, so this is, is the Flint Water and Espasia Felts. Okay, they are in a band together called Soul Obscured. I just got a glimpse from the Wages of Fear. Look at that. And essentially, Flint plays guitar, Aspasia sings. Aspasia's kind of a goth chick, you know, and as you can see, she's extremely voluptuous. So, you know, she's one of the girls that I kind of like to draw and like to date. And I mean, whoops. And that's true, though. But anyway, Flint is a young African American guy. He is the half brother, the slightly younger half brother of my character, Jareth Lloyd-Langton. Jareth Lloyd-Langton, I do have a portrait of, but I have not put it in a frame yet. I don't even know if I have any prints out right at the moment. But Jareth has been a long-time character of mine since 1986. He was one of the people who's suspected of being this bizarre character that played the strange alien guitar and phased in and out of reality called Transient. And I discussed Transient in a previous video at some length because my character Convy Lee was also suspected of being in. Convy Lee played bass, but you know, he could also play rhythm guitar. So, but you know, Jareth is basically like, if I had to describe him, he would be, he's a bright, smart guy. He's likable. He's always had pretty good luck with the ladies. He's had a few tempestuous love affairs. Um, he has 2 children by different ladies. One of whom is his current wife. Her name is Mia Zero, and she is a Japanese American old school punk rocker. And their child is named Valentina, named after her former best friend Valentine Sprague. So that's some details there. Jareth has been through a lot, and you know, you name it. And he's grown in power over the years, so he can wield this sonic ability. Basically, the way he plays, conjures up different energy effects and fields and such. He can't really be like shot or hit or anything. He can't really be touched when he's phasing in and out like that. And he keeps playing. And of course, I'm not mine. I'm imagining the music, and I'm thinking when he phases in and out, he's hitting like really really heavy chords, very Sabbath-esque kind of, maybe even heavier, but if possible. Um, but mainly what he's known for is his lead work, and his lead work on his albums is really sweet, really melodic, very nice tone, very just completely transcendent. If I would compare him to lead guitarists in real life that I enjoyed this particular vibe, this really amazing soaring lead work, I would mention Jeff Beck. I would mention Uli John Roth. I would mention Prince, um, possibly Brian May. Um, yeah, I'm probably forgetting Robin Trower, probably. So guys like that, a little Hendrix, but those are some of the major ones. I mean, Jeff Beck to me is a superhuman anyway in reality. Um, so Jareth it's taken him a lot more years, and he's of a different generation. But within the Flicker Street reality, by the current story, Ellinger, he's world renowned for his talent, but he still stays in Hallmark, hangs with his family. He came back to his original band, Merciless Dog, and still recording with them. He's content, you know. He's not somebody stands up in front of millions of people and has to be the center of attention. He doesn't have this kind of arrogant, egotist guitar thing that a lot of rock guitarists seem to have. Like, let's be really loud and overbearing, and it's all about me. He's a team player, but when it's on him to solo, he's somewhere else, man. I mean, every note counts, and he's not a big shredder. He's more of a soaring kind of, he can shred, but he's more of a soaring kind of lead player. Um, who's another player I thought of? David Gilmour, maybe occasionally, like on Animals. I'm just throwing things out there, but there's several that have that kind of style that on different, songs, different in different bands. Dave Murray of Iron Maiden at times. Um, but yeah, and even like Robert Fripp when he starts to do the kind of Frippertronics and stuff isn't as emotional, but it's very his lines are great. I mean, his tone is great. So anyway, didn't think you would geek out with me over music, did you? Well, that's another thing I'm obsessed with. And a lot of the characters in Flicker Street are musicians. Um, that has just seemed to be my protagonist. I guess it's kind of like a Dario Argento movie where they always have someone who's a creative type person, um, who has to just thrust into something weird and has to, not the movie, and has to solve a problem. Um, the rock drummer in Four Flies on Grey Velvet, the writer in Bird of the Crystal Plumage. Um, you would argue the blind former reporter in Cat o' Nine Tails. Um, of course, this comes from Blow Up, the photographer, played by David Hemming. So you can kind of blame Argento's thing on Antonioni. And Antonioni, of course, is one of the masters. But before I start sounding like I'm going to do Blue Review, let me get back to my story. So anyway, Jareth's father stole a lot of money and some very irreplaceable technology from the organization called Skull Corp. And this was in the late 1950s. And he and three other men. One was the captain of a guard from the country of Libania, which Libania is kind of a resource-rich place in the Flicker Street reality, and it's also a place where alien technology was found in a ziggurat that was many thousands of years old. And so the United States intelligence agencies have covertly tried to mine and tap into this stuff for a while. In the 1950s, they kind of succeeded, and they put a paranormal investigator division called REACT, capital REACT, all capitals. It is an acronym, to monitor these things. And eventually, one of the alien races that had come to Earth, a representative named Ursulan from Omega Ceti 1, he made kind of a deal with REACT, and he also made a deal with Skull Corp. And it looked as though his technology, albeit mostly going to be behind the scenes and taking years to develop and synthesize for humans, and very expensive. So only the elite would have it, or only the government would use it for good ends, which of course Ursulan found out his horror was just endless warfare, basically just killing people. Skullcorp used the technology for communications and transportation, and managed to further the technology there. So by the time we get to 2010 in my story, the technology is ahead of where we are in 2020. The computer revolution happened about the same way it did in our reality. The real divergencies start to happen, after the Vietnam War, and then with the military, the second buildup, the next buildup of military aggression under Ronald Reagan all over the world. And of course, in Flicker Street, the CIA is involved, but REACT is also involved in the alien technology part, or if there are any TSD trial subjects, sometimes known as recombinant, sometimes known as somatics. If there are any somatics involved, we would call them in other continuities like parahumans or posthumans or metahumans, or they're not all. I can't really call them superheroes because so few of them fit in even remotely into that appellation. So yeah, so they stole this money, and years later, the Libanian army, they're amusingly called FOPA. That's how you would say their acronym, FOPA, which is, essentially Freedom of the People's Army in the English translation. So they were like a pseudo-revolutionary kind of thing, like a Castro or a Che Guevara-esque kind of thing for Libania. And they were, raging against sanctions by the United States. They were trying to run REACT out of their country and hold on to their stuff, even the technology that which some of the less advanced people who lived in an adjacent country called Serafina. Seraphinians were they were like a third world country. They were like a fourth world country. They were like nothing to do with Jack Kirby. And they were like, some of them even were like Aboriginals who were still primitive, by, our terms, American terms, whatever, civilized world, the West, etc. Kind of like the Aborigines in Australia, who were marginalized and considered less than human until like way, way into the 20th century. There was several tribes of Seraphinians like this, and one of the tribes was actually still a cannibal Stone Age tribe. I brought in my kind of love of Italian cannibal movies for that kind of sub-arc. But in any case, so one of the people who stole the money and the artifacts was Captain Vargas Llosa, and he was the captain of the guard for FOPA. And he took off, and of course that was an important guy who split with some stuff, and they all took off with the help of the four of them. The other were two brothers called the Brothers Thorn, two of the three brothers Thorn, and they took off with Dr. Turner Lawton, and Dr. Lawton had synthesized a good deal of this technology for Skull Corp, and some of it for media related things, and then his specialty was uh, vibrational frequencies and telecommunications, radio waves, anything kind of to do with sound, and also things to do with energy, tapping into ambient fields of energy, electromagnetism as well. And so he was another important guy they lost. Basically, the four guys said, fuck this. We don't have these aims that this group seems to have. And seems to have is important to remember later in another installment. Not that I expect any of y'all to remember that. I may not myself. So they went underground. They went in hiding, these four characters. And years later, the man who was for years in charge of Skull Corp, known as Kong, basically had said, find these people, get our stuff back, kill them if you have to, kill their family if you have to. I'd rather not go down that road. Unfortunately, there were people working directly under Kong who weren't as magnanimous as he was. They were pretty much like, kill the whole family, take everything, maybe pocket some of the money ourselves if the money hasn't all been spent. What they found was, the FOPA agents found over time, was that all four of these men had lived very quiet, unassuming lives. Vargas Llosa changed his name to Emilio Florenza. He became a school teacher in Hallmark. I mean, they were like right under their nose the whole time, really. And Turner Lawton moved to France, changed his name various times, but he married a woman named Jareth, and they had Jareth. And when Jareth had been a trial subject of TSD as well, and so his mind could tap into these energy fields, and sonics were what able to control them. He would get these horrible headaches, but when he would like play guitar or play music, it would lessen the tension. And when he got far enough, he would eventually start to kind of phase a little. So basically, Turner Lawton had an alien guitar. He had a guitar from the planet Omega, based around the way they play music. He modified it a bit. He made some, he said, when you're an adult, I'm going to let you have this, but I'm going to make some other kind of similar prototypes from this idea. And so he's played these various things throughout his teen years, and even childhood, and he ended up becoming somewhat powerful. He would phase in and out. He would control energy. He could do all kinds of strange things, affect electricity, affect magnetism, potentially unlimited power through sound. But like I said, he's not a superhero or a supervillain or anything like that. He's a musician. But he's used his power many times to get him out of trouble, and a few times to get revenge. Jareth's a cool guy. So Turner Lawton, he made a stop in Hallmark to see Emilio Florenza, the professor, who used to be his friend, the captain, Vargas Llosa. And while he was there, he met a young black revolutionary woman called Maya Clancy. She was kind of like a Black Panther. And they had an affair, and that produced a young man called Trent Clancy. As Trent Clancy got older, he didn't really want Turner Lawton to know about him. He was kind of bitter that he felt like Turner Lawton had ditched his mother, which isn't really what happened. It was a mutual, consensual, brief affair. The pregnancy was unforeseen, and I guess to be real frank, the condom broke, possibly, or leaked, And I know that's getting like way into detail, but you know, that's kind of how some of my stories are. Um, they can be pretty, you know, NC-17 rated there. Um, but basically, um, wow, Wages of Fear is getting intense. So essentially, my favorite word of this year. Um, Trent grew up and was not thrilled about the thought of meeting his father, and of course, his father was killed before he ever got to meet him. And Jareth had sworn revenge on the people who killed his father, and they later killed his mother, most likely. I don't know if I've decided on that or made her fate completely. After all these years, her fate is still a little fuzzy. But I know she's not. He's an orphan by the time he enters the storyline when he's about 20 years old. And he's still a character, a strong major character, like I said, and a famous musician in the year 2010, 2011, the years I'm working with. Um, Trent eventually came, he left, him and his mother had left Hallmark for a long time. So, anyway, eventually he came to Hallmark and he wanted to find his brother. And they reunited, and by that time he had changed his name to Flint Water, and he was a musician himself, a guitar player. He was a very excellent guitar player, and I've been trying to formulate guitarists that I liken him to, and you know I've tried to think of some jazz guitarists, but also some kind of black psychedelic rock guitarists. Eddie Hazel comes to mind as somebody that I can see Flint playing a lot like. Eddie Hazel, maybe Sonny Chirac, you know, maybe the Hendrix Prince thing. Though he is not a performer like any of these guys. He doesn't wear outlandish outfits, as you can tell. He's a simple looking dude, but he has this inordinate skill. So for many years, him and Jareth, you know, like brothers, they became fairly tight. They became friends. Jareth always felt like he was living under. Flint always felt like he was living under Jareth's shadow, and he also felt like he was living under the shadow of the founder of his band, Soul Obscured, who was named Deric Stenbrow or Deric Pasquin. Um, Deric and Espasia had been in love. Deric was on the spectrum. I guess you would say he had Asperger's, autism. It was very difficult to reach him, but he was a musical genius, as his older half brother Grimm had been. And Grimm was kind of like a prince-like character from during that period, but he was dead by the 90s um, when Flint was introduced. Uh, Deric and Aspasia had a thing, and then Deric disappeared and was not seen for years, though a bizarre vigilante began stalking Hallmark called Snowman, and Snowman turned out to be Deric much later. Um, but Snowman was the perfect vent for Deric's um, his rage. You know, that was the side of him he couldn't express. That he was always an inward turned person. Um, Snowman was like another person he could become and vent that rage, just as his music was also an outlet for him. So he had these two, a creative and a destructive side, which enabled him to deal with his autism and his autistic state. And, you know, he never really became socially developed to a massive extent. Um, but Aspasia was patient with him, and she loved him. She loved his music, and she thought he was very attractive. He was a young biracial guy, very light-skinned African American. His father was white, his mother was black, and Deric's a great character. He's a major character in Ellinger too, even now. But um, this is why I have them in here because they are too. Aspasia took over the band when Deric disappeared. She was already the lead singer, and they began performing a lot of his songs and songs him and Aspasia had worked on together. Flint became their lead guitarist, and he was early in the band, but he wasn't a founder of the band. So by 2010, The band has gone through a few incarnations, but these two have stayed the constants. Um, they've always been friends, co-writers, bandmates, occasionally roommates, but never anything more. But Flint starts to kind of change around 2009. Some things happen to him, and you begin to see a more sinister side of Flint. Um, and basically, he seduces young Espasia, and by this time has long ago given up on Deric, even though she's found him. They're not going to date or have a relationship. Deric feels incapable of being in a relationship, whereas Aspasia, she's a passionate young girl, well, young woman by that time, and she was married for a while to a guy named Armageddon Parfino. Armageddon Parfino was an industrial musician and mage, and he was very influenced, by a real life personage whose music I enjoy, who passed away recently. They were very similar, but Armageddon, not his real name. Armageddon Parfino did pass away in a story just prior to austerity. So that she was a widow. She's been a widow ever since. So it's been several years. She's tried to get things back with Deric, but they tried it, it didn't work. So somehow her and Flint end up coming together. It's like a need. Well, on her part, it's like a need slash loneliness, horniness kind of thing. For him, it's like something more. He wants complete control over Deric's work and the whole band, and he kind of does become that egotistical, loud playing guitar player, Machiavellian, who's manipulating everyone and who has to be heard above everyone else. And Jareth notes the changes in his brother, and he thinks it's just because, well, Soul Obscured has never broken, so to speak, as a band in like the 15 years or whatever they've been together. And whereas Merciless Dog in the over 20 years they've been together have broke and have had some successful albums, and then they've had some complete flops. But they're not really a commercial band anyway. They're more of a progressive group. Soul Obscured is kind of a progressive group too, but their stuff's a little more reliably melodic and a little more soul influenced, as by their name, um, with a lot of psychedelia trappings and various other kinds, a little bit of dub in there. But basically, you would think they would have broken before Merciless Dog, but Merciless Dog, just to be frank, has just been at it longer and had musicians of a higher caliber. Flynn, however, is a great musician, and a benefactor approaches him in 2010 and says, "Hey, I'm curious about something. You have the same abilities as your brother. Can you do this transient thing too?" And Flint never really believed he could. I mean, he would have mental flashes and he would have the headaches. A lot of things were hallucinatory to him, but you know, it never manifested in this kind of way that Jareth did. Jareth did. So, because he, basically their father had tested the TSD substance on himself. And so that's why his two sons had this mental mutation. Um, as we're talking about a strange alien, a synthesized formula that's synthesized from a very strange alien substance that was kind of a combination of dark Piscean alchemy and Omegan genetic technology. So, in any case, this guy gives him a guitar much like Jareth's, and a rig, and says, I want you to try to do this. And so secretly, Flint begins kind of training. This is probably around 2000. I would say this is probably around 2008, 2009 when this happens, kind of behind the scenes near the end of the austerity story. It's when he's practicing this. No one really knows this. It's before he seduces Aspasia, but he essentially, by 2010, 2011, he's become rather powerful, but no one really knows about it. Aspasia is suspecting. Um, a few people are suspecting. His niece, Jareth's daughter, Mariah, she strongly dislikes Flint and thinks that Flint has really disrupted their whole family and turned into kind of an asshole. And she's kind of snoopy, and Mariah is definitely concerned with, is Flint like trying to hurt my father and mother? Is, their parents are not married and never were, but Mariah's mother was a young black woman who's, well, she's a young black woman, but her father was the Emilio Florenza character I mentioned earlier, the professor who had been the captain of the guard. Emilio Florenza's daughter was Juliana Florenza. She's also been a major character of mine for years. I have not drawn a portrait of her yet. I drew one picture of her 25 years ago, and it was just a little sketch, and I have no idea what happened to it. It might be in a notebook somewhere, just in a lined paper, but um, I will do a portrait eventually. Um, Mariah thinks that Flint is trouble, and no one really listened to her on a big scale. But Jareth is circumspect. He's not an idiot. He's kind of like watching Flint, just listening more than anything else. Where is this guy's head at? What are his goals with this band? And his band is starting now to break, and they're playing a lot, and they're recording a lot, and their music on one hand is changing and evolving and progressing as Flint's playing is progressing, because he wants to achieve more tonal effects so that he can tap into this power more. But on the other hand, their music's getting, I guess, a little more like Deric's. He's kind of ripping off Deric more, almost as if to put his middle finger in Deric's face and say, I got your music, I got your woman, I've got more talent than you at doing things with your music and with your woman. So fuck you. And Deric, of course, is baffled, nonplussed, and a little angry. So that's the dynamic with these guys when Ellinger starts, the storyline Ellinger. I'll go ahead and tell you that you could probably guess who the benefactor who gives him the technology is. Same benefactor also notes Deric's disgruntled mood and says, hey, I can help you too. But, it's going to be our secret. And yes, that character is the mysterious Ellinger. But who is Ellinger? Well, we'll talk about that another time. I even did a piece of art that a lot of people liked, which was like a collage piece called Who is Ellinger? But if I get it printed out, I'll show it to you guys another time. So I didn't think I'd spend this long on just these two characters. I had 3 whole other characters, but we can always do this next time. This is a long episode, but I got really deep into this, and as you can tell, all of it interrelates, and I think it's pretty good stuff. But I'm just saying that partially because, like I said, I don't know if I can take credit for all of it. I feel like a lot of it, I'm a conduit for it. It's kind of, there is a Flickr Street somewhere, and my mind is kind of bringing you transmissions from Flickr Street, so to speak. Other writers have said this before many times. William Burroughs once said, I'll never be alone as long as my characters are in my head. And L. Frank Baum always, prefaced his Oz books with, he's been in contact again with Oz, and he's reporting to the children, what's going on with the characters. So I didn't consciously take those ideas from men like that. I arrived at that all by myself, and then I would find things that they wrote, and it resonated. It's like I had found the things that they had found. I had discovered that inspiration, that epiphany, so to speak. And I once had a band called Epiphany, so that's my fondness for that idea, concept. So, epiphany, it's from a Greek word, and I believe it originally meant something like a revelation from the gods. So maybe maybe Flickr Street is a revelation from the gods. Who knows? Maybe the devils. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to split. Take care. Thank you. I'm glad you watched, and I hope you liked it.